Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma and Christina Rivers.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, and today we are without my brother from another mother, so I guess I'm going to bring in someone who hasn't been on the show for a while, my sister from another mister, Christina, Tina, Three Rivers, Christina Rivers. What is your title anymore anyways? You're kind of like the jack of all trades here at Steel City Underground. Managing editor, I think, is what we christened you, but you're kind of also, I guess, the team mom as well. Bring us some sliced oranges. Tina, how you doing?
Good. I think it's kind of like almost like the fairy godmother.
That's good.
When someone other than Terry, because Terry doesn't need mothering, because Terry probably has more experience in that area than I do. Terry doesn't need mothering, so between the two of us, whenever there's like a financial, mental crisis, a crisis of faith in the team, I guess we're kind of like the go-to gals to try to say, it'll be all right, or suck a buttercup this week.
Yeah, and unfortunately, one of the things getting out to you a little later than we wanted to, some technical difficulties on Tina's end. So we hope the audio holds up here on your end, Tina. So you're not just going to hear me endlessly ramble for the sake of rambling and cutting her off. It's we're going through some hurdles, and hopefully that's not a big issue. Let's talk about some other issues, though, before we get into this game coming up this Sunday. Steelers opening up at home week 2 here against the Las Vegas Raiders, which I got to get used to saying. And the Raiders, this is actually kind of just the setup for this game, to be completely honest. A Sunday 1 o'clock game against a West Coast team traveling to Pittsburgh on a short week after having played a Monday Night Football game that went to overtime tends to kind of already balance this in the favor of the Steelers. The Raiders played 86 plays on Monday night against the Baltimore Ravens. They need some rest. They've got a lot of injuries. If anyone has looked, their injury depth chart is it's longer than my arm out to my fingers. They have, I don't know how many guys are here, more than a dozen, I think. So we're going to go through some of that. But Tina, first of all, how do you like everyone working on their calf muscles and all their back leg muscles, backpedaling, and pretty much picking the Steelers this week to beat the Raiders?
I love it. I love it. All week long, it was kind of like a gloat thing because, people were sharing the memes and saying, oh, this aged well, and showing all the experts, just totally biting on the whole Hollywood story of Josh Allen and the Bills being the contenders in the NFL. It almost reminded me of how rabid the experts would get over, Tom Brady and the Patriots are going to take it again this year. And darn that Tom Brady, but I'm not sure Josh Allen's at the level that we could start calling him the heir apparent to the AFC East yet.
Yeah, and I tend to really like him. I like the team in general. When I talk to the fellas over at the Rock Pile Report who cover the Bills, I haven't actually spoken with them since. I didn't want to rub it in or anything like that. We thought it'd be a competitive game. They did not like their offensive line. I think that's something that's going to be a theme here. You take a look around the AFC North. We didn't get to discuss this. We went pretty much live as fast as we could after the game, so we still didn't have a conclusion yet to the Browns and the Chiefs. And then, of course, the Monday night game with the Ravens and Raiders. And now everybody's looking at this, and it's like, well, the two teams you thought would be 0-1 are actually the 1-0 teams, with the Steelers and the Bengals having won. And the Bengals eked that out, too, an OT game against the Vikings. So now all of a sudden everyone's like, whoa, were we sleeping on the Steelers? And I just got to say, I don't have a whole lot. I'm not going to say a whole lot about the Browns just yet. It is the Kansas City Chiefs that they played, but I think the Raiders came as a surprise, and there was just a comedy of errors actually between both teams, and specifically the Ravens had multiple opportunities to win that game. They look like they're in trouble with their offensive line, and I'm not going to just single out Alejandro Villanueva like everyone else is. They're just piling on him after 1 week. But it looked rough out there, and we had said that the Steelers, everyone was talking about the Steelers' offensive line. There's been a lot of praise this week for Kendrick Green, and there's also been like some really stupid grading out there for Ben. I don't know how Aaron Rodgers gets a better grade from Pro Football Focus than Ben Roethlisberger after the game that Aaron Rodgers, the true diva, if anyone, I'm not sure if you heard this, Tina. Did you hear the comments by Chris Carter on Good Morning Football by any chance?
Yeah, I did.
Oh, man.
I did, and I have to kind of laugh because I'm not even sure if Aaron Rodgers really has anything left. But yeah, the comments were funny.
The comments from for those who may not have heard it, it was Chris Carter jumps on. So Nate Burleson's moved on to like CBS this morning. He's still doing some guest spots. So he's showing up here or there, but they've had other guys filling in. And Chris Carter comes in, and he starts talking about how Ben's this big diva, and he's calling out teammates. And then he brings up his motorcycle accident from, when was that? Like 2005, 2006? What the heck are you talking about? Oh, I know this guy. I've been paying attention to him for a while because he's an Ohio guy, and Chris Carter's an Ohio guy too. And it's like, just shut up, man. You're like, you were so like out of touch. It's not even funny. And it was trying to think it wasn't Peter Schrager. It was the Kyle Brandt, I think, was actually like trying to get him to clarify. And then, of course, they were going through, and there was this thing that was like randomizing quarterbacks to talk about, and he gets Ben again, and he like doubles down on it. And it was just, for me, it was kind of, it was obnoxious, and I just couldn't believe it that we're hearing this, and then we're hearing from Pro Football Focus. I mean, Aaron Rodgers was 15 of 28, 133 yards with 2 picks against in a 38-3 loss to Jameis Winston and the New Orleans Saints at a game that was played not even in New Orleans due to all the hurricane stuff. They moved it to Jacksonville, Florida, so it's at a neutral site. Aaron Rodgers, 53.6% completed, 4.8 yards per attempt. Very un-Aaron Rodgers-like, and I'm not saying throw the dirt on him yet either, but for anybody to go out and just say that Ben was worse by any means, any stretch of the imagination than a performance like that is just crazy. Now I understand Ben was sub 60% completions against the Bills. So was Josh Allen. And Josh Allen attempted 51 passes in that game. It was just, it was pretty wild when you're thinking about the quarterback performances from last weekend. It's still week one. It was still week one of the NFL. So there's only one game in the can for most of the teams. It's a little early, I think, to just, say, okay, this team's in trouble and this team's going to do great or anything. So I'm not going to press on Rodgers. But the thing is, he was the one who was the diva the entire offseason. He's the one who had the bad performance. I think he got the wrong photos mixed up there between Rodgers and Roethlisberger. They both begin with an R. So I can't make fun of his education because he went to Ohio State. So, although I would like to. Hey.
Then again, he maybe just has something really, a traumatic experience with motorcycles. And so the motorcycle issue just kept coming to the forefront for him. And that's all he could think. Big Ben and the motorcycle.
Yeah, I don't understand it. So, anyways, with all of the little off-field things there, we know it's just a little bit of validation, if only for one game. But Ronnie Stanley's going to be hurt for the Ravens, and he's going to be out, and they got to move Villanueva over, and Patrick McCurry's going to be coming in, I think, as the other I think that's who it was coming in as the other tackle. Anyways, this wasn't a Ravens show. It was just a matter of there were a lot of people who gave myself and Brian and Zach Meckler a lot of grief for some of our predictions and some of the takes that we had during the offseason, and just, we're right so far. So we'll see how this plays out. You know what I mean? The Steelers still got to get this done against the Raiders. Max Crosby was all over in the Ravens backfield. So when I'm saying that they are both making similar types of moves and changes, a big youth infusion into the Steelers offensive line, you never know. This could be the same way it looks this week. You don't know that. But I'm feeling a little bit better about just the fact that this is a 1:00 game with the West Coast team coming over on a short week, let alone all of the various injuries now that the Raiders are dealing with. They have just lost. Where is it at? Well, they got a bunch of people not practicing. Let me see. Who did they just lose to injured reserve? Denzel Good was one, and Gerald McCoy was the other. So instantly you're down your right guard. Richie Incognito hasn't been practicing, didn't play on Monday night. He's the left guard. So the interior, along with the center, who started only his second game in the NFL. He's a third-year player, undrafted, because they let Rodney Hudson go, and then he was moved over to the Arizona Cardinals during the offseason. They have a rookie still right tackle, Alex Leatherwood. And then Colton Miller, of course, one of the guys that they drafted just a few years ago, too, as well. He's been a pretty consistent player there, first rounder. A lot of people thought that he went too early. And that's basically what you got for the offensive line that was considered when you're looking back the year before. Nobody was talking about, maybe they were a little bit, but the Raiders' offensive line. So this is who's going to try and keep Derek Carr upright as we see the Steelers' defense just totally ravage what the Buffalo Bills had. I don't. If I'm the Raiders, I'm not feeling too confident about the interior of their offensive line. Josh Jacobs has also been kind of banged up. They did sign Kenyon Drake as another running back that's backing him up. So there may not be a whole lot of change of pace when it comes to their game plans if they have to move on from Jacobs to Drake. But it's going to be interesting to see the Steelers defense up against whatever this offense looks like. Not to mention, I'm not in the firm belief that Derek Carr, as you mentioned, is an elite quarterback.
Well,
I set you up nice for that.
I was going to say, now, according to his brother, Derek Carr should be the league MVP every year.
I know.
But that's according to his brother, who's no longer in the league. So that's about the only comment I have about the Carr brothers.
I mean, Derek, he had a pretty decent game. I'm not going to say he had a great game. It was 19 targets to Darren Waller. And it's like, this is the guy you got to cover. Steelers have had problems with tight ends. Tight ends traditionally line up pretty well against their schemes. We know this from the past. He caught 10 of those 19 targets for 105 yards and a touchdown. Derek Carr himself, 435, completing just a little over 60% against the Ravens defense, which I can't gauge properly because they're down Marcus Peters, who they lost during the week. Then they didn't have Jimmy Smith to fill in there either. So I'm not sure how the secondary is really working there. I can tell you, though, with the Steelers, to make a comparison, the reason I'm wearing Devin Bush today is that this is probably, along with Joe Schobert, the two that are going to be tasked with shutting down the backs and the tight ends. I think Darren Waller is going to get doubled quite frequently. A big surprise from the Steelers game just the other day was the amount of time that Trey Norwood played. All of the rookies, to be completely honest, it's just phenomenal. 5 of them, and I think 6 if we count Harvin, getting substantial contributions in that game against the Buffalo Bills. Mike Tomlin said this isn't necessarily indicative of every game, and that obviously means it's going to be dictated by matchups and what ends up going on and transpiring on the field. Norwood was out there for 68 snaps, 80% of the time. But what's ended up happening is something that we didn't end up anticipating. They're letting Minkah Fitzpatrick roam. And I could have actually chose to wear 39 instead of 55 today for the show. I plan on wearing 39 this weekend when I'm in the house at Heinz Field. But it's kind of a scary thought that I think Minkah Fitzpatrick could he have dare I say, breakout season? I think the way that they're going to deploy him is going to benefit that matchup with Waller. It's going to force the Raiders into using some of their other players. We still don't know. Henry Ruggs, Brian Edwards, Hunter Renfrow. I don't know that I'm necessarily terrified of these names after having gone up against Cole Beasley, Gabriel Davis, Stephon Diggs, and Emmanuel Sanders. Darren Waller's the biggest name here. Any other thoughts on the Raiders' offense and how they match up against the Steelers?
Well, it's interesting because before we got on, I was looking at an article that was written by someone that had given five reasons that the Raiders would be able to beat the Steelers. And one of the reasons they gave was that the pass rush for their defense would be able to overwhelm the offensive line. So if I'm going to say that there's like one thing to keep an eye on, it's probably both offensive lines. But as far as the Raiders' offense, I haven't seen anything yet, even just in preseason, that made me say, okay, they've got so and so as wide receiver one. To me, it seems like it's still kind of in flux. And the Steelers' offense kind of is still in a flux too. Everybody finding their footing. So, yeah, I don't know what to really expect. A little early yet, but I don't see anybody that like really stood out. And like you pointed out, the Steelers traditionally. Well, I wouldn't even say traditionally. People have seen the Steelers struggle with teams that rely heavily on a tight end. And so it's become traditional to believe that the Steelers can't cover a tight end. But if Waller is the guy that's getting all the targets, how much does Keith Butler really have to adjust if he already knows coming into it that that's who they're going to go to?
Yeah, and how many tight ends have tore up the Steelers traditionally, maybe over the last season or two? It hasn't been quite the, leaking ship that it had been prior to Devin Bush's arrival. And in between that space where Ryan Shazier, got injured. And even when Shazier was there, it was still like Lawrence Timmons or Vince Williams. You had some of these, kind of more bruising, downhill, blitzing types, run stuffing linebackers. Joe Schobert is a guy that's very solid in coverage, more athletic. We saw him on the field quite a bit. And as I kind of alluded to or kind of guessed, I'm going to say he was out there for 66 snaps against the Buffalo Bills. Bush was out there for 73. Just to give you an idea, the Steelers played a total of 85. Cam Sutton never came off the field whatsoever. Cam Sutton is another guy that's moving around quite a bit. Norwood is someone that I was surprised with playing about 80% of the game. When they had to go a little heavier with the DBs, James Pierre did come out there for about a third of the game as well. So they're still, when they're using maybe 5 defensive backs in their schemes. Arthur Maulet also got in there for about 13 snaps as well. So maybe just to give Norwood a breather or two in those cases, but a little still, it's not a full 100% when you add Norwood and Pierre. Pierre would then go maybe on the outside, and they bring Sutton more closer inside. So they got a lot of different scheme things that they're doing. We know that Sutton could fill in well on the back end. He can play kind of like a pseudo safety. This is where they have Norwood playing quite a bit too. And Fitzpatrick seems like he's going to be freelancing. And I guess there was a small quote that dropped from one of our buddies, Jim Wexel. And let me see what I'm going to try and find Jim's quote here verbatim so I don't butcher it as I tend to do.
Yeah, because if I would have paraphrased it, there'd have just been one word.
Yes, and it's and this is something that it's something kind of interesting that Jim is talking about with Minkah, and Jim, of course, authored the Troy Polamalu kind of biography, pseudo-biography, endorsed by Troy, but it's not like a full recounting from Troy. It's from a bunch of different perspectives and things that Jim has covered, for like 25, 30 years covering the Steelers. And Jim said, media just heard Butler, that is the Steelers defensive coordinator, Keith Butler, mention Minkah in the same sentence as Troy. Per Dimebacker was an awakening, so be ready. And I'm like, whoa, okay. Kind of tipping the cap there to some of the things we were thinking about. And he also followed up. I remember first day here, Minkah strongly denying that playing multiple roles, which he's being asked to play now, was reason he wanted out of Miami. Kind of interesting stuff. So I think Minkah Fitzpatrick is definitely an X factor in this game. You can never count out TJ Watt or that whole rotation with Alex Highsmith and Melvin Ingram. Melvin Ingram, of course, jumped off the page for me. These are the guys to watch on the defense. As we flip over the offense, though, first, want to talk about MyBookie, and the NFL is back in action, and so is the winning season at MyBookie. With over $500,000 in contest prize money, winning season makes the big games better and the victories even sweeter. Head on over to mybookie.ag and choose from a variety of boosts, contests, and promotions up for grabs, highlighted by the crown jewel of winning season, that is the famed MyBookie Super Contest. It only costs $10 to enter. Pick 5 games against the spread each week. Each win earns you a point, and each point gets you closer to the grand prize. If you missed out on week 1, don't sweat it, because entries are still open, and all it takes is one solid week to get you back in the mix. Don't just take my word for it. Join now. Start your winning season with MyBookie today. To get started, make your first deposit. The website's mybookie.ag. You could use the promo code SteelCity to instantly receive double your deposit. That's double your money to double your winnings with your first ever deposit using the promo code SteelCity. Very clever there. All one word, by the way. Not case sensitive, so however you want to type it. Steel City is the promo code. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere with MyBookie. And as we look over at mybookie.ag and the sportsbook NFL, I'm looking directly at, or I was, the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Raiders game. We said this last week, +6 to the Raiders, so the Steelers favored at home. Kind of customary. At least it's not 3.5. It's not as close of a game as like the Bills and the Miami Dolphins. So Steelers giving 6, and the over and under is 47. Man, that's a tough one, because I truly think the Steelers defense can hold the Raiders to 20 or less. Now the question is, if it's 20 or less, and you got to beat, and you're doing over and under. I'm not trying to beat the spread here. Does the Steelers offense lay 30 on the Raiders defense?
Yeah, I'm not feeling that one. I'd have to take the under on that one, I think.
I mean, it's not impossible by any means. And of course, one of the defensive tackles, Gerald McCoy, is now out of this equation. Quentin Jefferson's likely, he was a healthy scratch last week. He's probably going to be there. Yannick Ngakoue and Carl Nassib both on the injury reports, with Ngakoue not looking very probable for this game at the time of this recording. And, of course, Max Crosby along that, the other guy along that 4-man front. They still have some other names. There's Clelin Ferrell, there's Solomon Thomas, so we'll see how that ends up playing out. The secondary that I'm looking at, Casey Hayward, Trayvon Mullen, Trevon Moehrig, and Jonathan Abram. I think the Steelers, when we talk about the offense, we're putting them up there, and we're talking about an over-under of 47. We're talking about 6 points. Again, their offense has to gel. So Chris Carter and some of these guys, they're a little bit right in some of what he says, in that this is still kind of new. He said Ben's going to throw the offensive coordinator under the bus. I don't think that he dislikes Matt Canada. I've not gotten that vibe yet from Ben. He's talked about it being different with Canada up in the booth, calling plays instead of being down on the field. But I have a feeling this is like prime territory, especially if this 4-man front is kind of tore up. This is going to be maybe a Najee Harris game. We're going to see a little more out of him than the 45 yards that he had last week. The Baltimore Ravens were able to run on, and with some of these other names still in the game with the Raiders, I know Lamar Jackson, blah, 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 but Tyson Williams, 9 carries, 65 yards. Now, Latavius Murray didn't do so hot, 10 for 28, but both of these guys scored a touchdown. There was a 35-yard long with Williams, 8-yard long with Murray. I could see something creeping out. Will it be Harris's first 100-yard game? I don't know, but I could see him in the 80 to 90 territory. It depends, I guess, on game script and if the Steelers are going to run the ball a little bit. How you feeling about the Steelers offense, Tina, and who sticks out to you as maybe having a breakout game against the Raiders?
Oh, that one's tough, because the person I want to have a breakout is our young tight end from Penn State, Big Pat.
Yeah.
Or as Ben Bierman, who he wrote the 5 Steelers to watch in the Raiders game. He said he wants to hear Heinz Field say, Muth. And at first I thought he said moo, and then I realized it was Muuuth. So I'd like to see Freiermuth, but the receivers look good when everything was clicking. So if you're looking at two halves of the game, at the beginning of the game against the Bills, I think everyone can agree that the offense it didn't look good. But by the second half, they kind of rallied and the receivers kind of went off. So I expect Deontay Johnson to have possibly a 100-yard game against the Raiders.
That's pretty good. I think someone will.
Yeah. I don't know. I guess I'm getting the feeling for him because it seems like lately Ben and him have been I don't know, maybe it was the jugs machines or the tennis balls that he was doing at training camp, sleeping with the football, carrying the football, that old idea, don't ever let the football out of your hands. But if they line him up in the slot, they could put Juju in the slot too and mix things up with some crossing routes and underneath routes too, with Juju being a good blocker. So I'm going to say Johnson. Although I really hope Big Pat gets more involved this week.
Yeah, Freiermuth's mine. I really thought we would have saw a little more from him against the Bills. Need to throw in a little bit more notes on the injury report when it comes to the Steelers. Don't really have much of anybody. Robert Spillane, limited practice. Mike Tomlin expects him to be available on Sunday. I mentioned Clelin Ferrell earlier. He was a full practice. Jonathan Hankins was a full practice. So they got some of these guys. But Richie Incognito, as I mentioned before, Josh Jacobs, there were DMPs. Marcus Mariota, who actually got some snaps. They had they had plays and situations for him to run almost kind of like a Lamar Jackson type style. John Gruden was throwing him out there on Monday night, and then of course he got hurt. He was did not practice as well. We'll see what happens. Carl Nassib did not practice. Yannick Ngakoue limited with a hamstring. Denzel Perryman is the one that I didn't mention with a hip. He was limited. That's yet another starter, one of their starting linebackers. So there's really a number of ways the Steelers can attack this. If that happens to be the case, I think the tight ends could feast. I think Chase Claypool is just, there's going to be one of these games where he's just going to break out also. But every time I see Deontay Johnson touch the ball, I'm just waiting for him to break someone's ankles. The guy breaks so many tackles. I don't know the catching. We still got to see. It's just a small body of work. But that catch in the corner of the end zone last week was just, that's a highlight we're going to be looking at for the rest of the season whenever we mention his name. And those are the kind of things that kind of they build your resume and you start to forget about the drop season, things of that nature that happened last season. So I don't know. Do we have anything to talk about with special teams when it comes to the Raiders? Dan Carlson looked like somebody that can kick pretty far, but you're still in Heinz Field. Other than that, I think this is pretty cut and dry. I'm trying not to be the complete homer, super bias, although you look around and that's exactly what we are. But you got to be feeling pretty good about the Steelers' odds against a reeling Raiders team coming from the other side of the country, having played a slugfest against the Ravens. Usually we talk about how when the Steelers and Ravens play each other or whatever opponent has played that team, the next week it usually favors the other opponent. So in this case, the Raiders having played the Ravens, it looks like the Raiders might have an uphill battle against the Steelers. And likewise, a lot of people are predicting the same with the Dolphins against the Bills, since the Bills got into a slugfest with the Steelers. Physical games wears a lot of teams out. Large injury report. It's really hard to see it any other way unless the Steelers just come out and stink out the joint. I don't think the defense is going to do that. I think Derek Carr will be under duress based on not just the offensive line, but now the shape that it's in and some of his playmakers. Can Drake hold up the fort as much as Jacobs? We'll see. Can any of these other receivers get it done? I mean, Brian Edwards, 4 for 81. Hunter Renfrow, one of their slot receivers, Ruggs. These guys were getting involved. There was a lot of yards given up by the Ravens. So, I mean, I'm not sure if I'm comparing apples to apples or apples to oranges here with the Steelers. Are the Ravens still an elite defense? Did they have a week off? Did they have extension of the preseason? Were they getting the yips or whatever from coming over to Vegas to play in that packed Death Star Stadium? It's hard to say a lot of these things. Usually what we see in September isn't always what we see in October, et cetera, et cetera. So the line being at 6 and 47, maybe we'll see a little bit more scoring between both of these teams. But I tend to think that the Steelers have the Raiders outmatched, outclassed on both sides of the football.
Well, and I think that a lot of people are overlooking the offensive line that the Steelers have. Yes, they allowed Ben to get pressured, but he only took 2 sacks. And one of them, he probably could have gotten the ball away. Whether or not the Raiders' pass rush is as formidable against the Steelers as it was against the Ravens, I want to lean towards no. I think that they'll be disruptive, but I'm not sure they'll be able to put up the same type of numbers that they put up against the Ravens as far as the Steelers, because I think that understanding that the line is young, the Steelers did make some substitutions last week, and maybe they're able to do that again if they see somebody is struggling or needs some instruction on the sidelines, and then send them back in. I can't remember who it was specifically that got called out, and J.C. Hassenauer went in for a few snaps.
Yeah,
and then
Kendrick Green. Kendrick Green came out, and I guess it wasn't anything very serious, but
to me, it seemed like it was probably just to come over to the sideline and stand by me so I can give you a coaching tip or two, and then we'll send you back out there. Because it wasn't that he was doing a bad job, but in fact, there were several plays where the offensive line, as young as they are, was getting good penetration into the defensive line area, pushing, finishing tackles. Or not tackles, I'm sorry, finishing blocks. So if there's one thing I think that people are like maybe banking on being weak is the Steelers' offensive line. And I'm not sold that they're as low on the totem pole as some of the rankings have been given. Like you mentioned PFF. I'm not sure some of those rankings are quite where I would have put them. And that's not to, I need to put a disclaimer. Please don't at me on Twitter with any comments about PFF and Raiders fans. In the past, I know I've disagreed with some, and they haven't been very happy with me. So just a disclaimer, these are opinions only based on looking at a body of work. And as we've said, the body of work has not been very much. And even Mike Tomlin said, 1 week does not write your season, and it's pretty hard to just give out trophies this early in the season as to, yep, this guy's gonna, MVP quality, and this guy's a rotating door.
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying, and they seem to have like a bias. And of course, whenever they don't, I like to point it out. And they actually had Kendrick Green ranked quite high. And if anyone saw the breakdown from Brian called him Baldy anyways, but Brian Baldinger over on NFL Network, he had some praise for Kendrick Green in his first start, and they're only going to build upon this, Tina. So will they still have some nerves? I think they will, but they're not on the road, and they're not on the road for the next 2 weeks. So those nerves may work their way out as they're not dealing with crowd noise and dealing with fans like in Buffalo that were there for like maybe the first time for a regular season for a kickoff weekend with a big opponent. They were rowdy. I mean, they were raucous. They're not going to have to deal with that stuff now against the Raiders and then against the Bengals as well the following week. This is going to give them an opportunity to really gel and sort it out, and we're going to see what they're made of, and we're going to see too along the edge and the outside. Like I said, Carl Nassib and Max Crosby, nobody to just really like sneeze at or overlook. So I think it'll be a good test for them there. We'll see if the running game gets going. We'll see if the Steelers defense can shut down Darren Waller and also shut down maybe some of these passes that come out of the backfield to some of the backs. I'm not so worried about the Raiders wide receivers just based on what the Steelers were able to do against the Bills. But then again, the Bills didn't have maybe the biggest presence at tight end and kind of ignored their running backs altogether in their backfield to where maybe a little bit more balance might catch the Steelers defense off guard here or there. But I still think the Steelers, I like the Steelers in this game. Can they cover 6? We'll find out. Don't forget the promo code SteelCity at mybookie.ag. And Tina, thanks for joining me once again today. We got through it, even with the technical difficulties.
Well, everyone has to understand the technical difficulties are because I'm old.
No, it's not. It's because you live in the middle of nowhere.
That's true. That's true. When you have to rent your own satellite in order to be able to communicate with the real world because you're so far off the grid. I have to call Elon Musk and I need charity. Can you please launch me like a special miniature satellite just so that I can have internet and talk to Joe? Yeah. We had to make that work before we could even get on the show today. So
no, it makes it sound like you're the Unabomber and you have a little outhouse or something on the property or whatever. But
who says I don't?
I don't know. Tina lives in Tornado Alley in Iowa, so she's not completely out there, but just enough to put a monkey wrench in our plans. And you know what? That's okay. I think everyone enjoyed having you here. I certainly did as well. And we need to get you some love on Twitter because these people want to know how they can bother you now. So it is It's three Rivers _writer.
Right. So the number 3, yes.
Yes, the number 3 on Twitter. We'll get some people to send you some love mail, maybe some hate mail as well. And I'll get back to some of these other comments. May have some other surprises coming up in the very near future for everyone as well. But until then, enjoy the game. Maybe mute it. It's Ian Eagle and Charles Davis again for a consecutive week. I won't have to deal with that until I see the replay. We'll be back to you early next week since I'm traveling and going to the game. And after the game, I'm pretty worn out. It's either the adult beverages or just the trauma that this team puts me through when they have their ups and downs, and it's like being in a prize fight.
I think we need a tailgate report from you because, as from what I'm hearing, is Raiders fans are traveling en masse to Pittsburgh so that they can black and silver out Pittsburgh, and I'm looking forward to at least hearing from you during the tailgate to let me know how much gold and black there is compared to silver and black.
And you know what? That is the lot that I tailgate in as well, coincidentally. Ooh. So had to deal with that with Buffalo. We show up, and I'm one to show up anywhere between 4 or 5 hours early. They usually open 5 hours before kickoff. So a 1 o'clock game is 8 o'clock for the lots to open. This is a cash lot, and everybody kind of knows it could be like the Wild West there. I'm trying to think how many years ago that was now. I was looking over the schedule. That wasn't 2018. Was that 2017 maybe when they were last there? They represented quite well. They weren't a problem, to be completely honest. And there's a lot of tradition and history, not only between these two teams, which, by the way, not like the Buffalo Bills and the curse of the terrible towel, but Derek Carr had to go and say that the ball hit the turf with the immaculate reception. I'd be remiss to have not mentioned his comments trying to stir up some old 70s
some
rivalry.
Old rivalry.
Yeah.
And that 70s rivalry, if people want to really know that I'm not a 12-year-old boy whose voice just hasn't changed, the 70s were my induction into total exposure and acceptance of the Steelers as the team. And so the Immaculate Reception, it's practically something that is tattooed in my mind. And I love the fact that anytime the Raiders and the Steelers play, I think back on some of the games and old NFL films where it's the dramatic voice, and they say, "Oh, and Mean Joe Green, he got up and pushed this guy down to the ground, and oh, Jack Tatum took a bite out of somebody's ankle," and it's like, yes, let's get back to the old days where, like, somebody's chewing somebody's socks and somebody's laying on the pile jarring in somebody's ear hole. Or that would be awesome.
Sharpening up like the edges on the face masks, or
maybe
like
not that extreme.
And stuff, like razors.
We don't need to go like
But it happened. That's the kind of stuff that would happen.
I know, yeah.
Keeps guys from putting their hands on your face or in your face.
and some of that stuff's scary, but it did make for great rivalry stories.
Yeah, and just I looked this up too. That was back in 2015, so it's been quite a while. And that was the Steelers' win at home. Of course, when they would travel out to Oakland, it was almost always a given that they would lose those games. The Raiders actually lead the series by 3 games, 16 to 13. And last time they played was 2018, and that was Raiders win 24-21, close game. And then when the Steelers last won at Heinz Field, November 8th, 2015, 38-35. Obviously, not a whole lot similar with these teams. And the last time the Steelers were on the road there, the X-ray machine didn't work. So there's always some type of goofy stuff that's going on in some of these.
The X-ray machine.
Yeah, I can't forget that. So we'll put a bow on this. We're going to see how this plays out, and we'll get back to you shortly with some more insights and some debriefs and breakdowns and whatnot. I'm going to let the rest of the AFC North rivals and haters who may tune in just lick their wounds for one more week, and we'll see what you do this week. It would be very, very nice to see the Steelers go 2-0 to start the season, though.
And we really especially appreciate those who come and watch the podcast who drink heavily beforehand, because their comments are always like the best entertainment.
Oh, there's a lot of entertaining comments. There's some that I obviously I have to delete. They're either spam, or you still get a few people that come on and just want to be total trolls, and it's like, no, not in this house. Not in this house. So, Tina, thanks for joining me. We went a little bit over and above here for this episode, but I think we covered most of the bases. We're going to see how this game plays out. Will this be a rivalry again? Are the Raiders relevant again? It's been a while, so that's why Derek Carr has to bring up stuff from the 70s. Anyways, everyone, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Her name is Tina. Couldn't see you. That's okay. Maybe next time. My name's Joe. And until next time, we encourage everyone out there to be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.